Hello?
Hi, good morning. My name is Denny, and I'm the general manager for the Costco in Abbotsford. I'm looking for Owen.
See,
Hi, is this Owen?
it is.
I am. Hopefully, I'm not catching you at that time. I heard that you were in the building yesterday, and you wanted to discuss something with me.
No,
How can I help you?
no, I wasn't in the building yesterday. I was just calling before I went to the building, and now I won't be going to the building.
Okay.
So, okay. Aside from the obvious, I have a medical exemption. I also understand the law because I have a relative who's a lawyer. He's a constitutional lawyer, actually. And I had a little discussion with your floor manager, or whatever you want to call her, and I actually recorded the conversation as well too, just to make sure that I didn't miss anything, or to make sure that I was not.
Was she aware that you were recording the conversation?
Yeah, I told her. Said, but
did she consent that?
Regardless,
because you need her approval to do that.
Well, that's only if I'm sharing it. I'm using it for my own personal information. So.
Okay, as long as you don't share that, because you need her approval.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. In order for any business to operate, the store owner must obtain and be through licensed by a municipality or through a province, depending on the kind of business. Once you're granted a license, the granting of the license presumes and assumes and to undertake that you are offered services and goods to the public. You must abide by the municipal and provincial laws, so once you get your license, you have to abide by the masking bylaws and the masking ordinance put out by the provincial government. But you can't ignore the second half of the ordinance that recognizes exemptions. And so you have to have the right to create your own fiefdom. Well, you basically don't have the right to create your own fiefdom. That's the only operating by a government license. You are subject to the laws and the human rights codes. Okay, so if people have problems donning or docking or wearing or breathing with a mask, we have an exemption. That exemption doesn't have to be physically, medical, it could be psychological as well. And I've got lots of friends who have been raped and have severe PTSD. We've got friends who have autism, which is just, I've got a friend who's got a 3-year-old autism child, and trying to put a mask on her boy is just like torture because it takes like an hour and it still doesn't stay on. So basically, this exemption even includes any and all grounds under the law under the Human Rights Code. So at the end of the day, the Supreme Court has said that you cannot quiz or question a person about the details of the religious beliefs, which I don't have. But what this law basically says is that you have to take our word for it, right? That we are exempt, pure and simple, because to do otherwise breaches our human rights under the code and our constitutional rights under the charter. So now I've got a ton of friends, literally, I've got thousands of friends because I've owned businesses and I play music professionally. I retired at a young age and I was able to basically go into music and tour around the world and meet people from all over the world. But I've got friends and families and even some exes who are a combination of epidemiologists, virologists, professors of relevant fields, department heads of hospitals, department heads of universities, doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, occupational health and safety people, and cellular biologists as well as researchers. And I've had them look into various studies and whatnot on masks. And I also took a look at Rocco Galati's class action suit that's currently going around. It's making its way out west regarding this whole social distancing and mask thing. And the problem that I'm finding, and I phoned the Fraser Valley Health Authority, I phoned Health BC, and I phoned the BC CDC. I also phoned Health Canada and NRCan, and I asked them for two very simple questions. To say, could you please provide your peer-reviewed evidence on healthy people wearing masks and healthy people practicing social distancing? And I scoured the BC CDC site, okay? And basically what happened was they were unable to provide me any information. They said, well, it's on the BC CDC's website. Well, no, it isn't, because I went there. So basically what's going on right now is the high-level science and the whole debate has actually been ignored. It's being censored and whatnot. And that's not how you have a debate on science. You just, when you go and impose measures, you have to have the strong science behind you. You can't use anecdotal observations, okay? This is a huge problem, like a massive problem. There was no justification in terms of the first lockdown. People are worried about all the cases. like the spike in cases. Well, if you're using, see, like I had a friend do an FOIA request to 34 different institutions and countries around the world asking for their proof of the isolation and purification of this alleged virus. And they included Health Canada, included the UK NHS, included Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, the CDC down in the States, and a few other schools as well. And they all came back after the FOIA request stating that they have no evidence to be able to prove of the isolation. This whole thing basically, they map the genome with the model, and the model is what got us into this problem in the first place through Neil Ferguson and Imperial College. Now, I have literally spent 7,000 hours researching this, because when you take away my livelihood, I'm not going to fight with you, because fighting doesn't do anything, okay? I research, and I'm grateful for my father to sort of, all the times when I was a kid, when he grounded me, I spent time reading. I also was extremely sickly as a child, so I spent a lot of time in the hospital. My favorite aunt, who passed away from an asthma attack when I was 11, was also a nurse. So I always asked questions. I always had access to medical books. I always brought the medical books into my doctor's office to be able to ask questions in order to get better informed. And I haven't stopped. Well, I don't go to the doctors anymore, because with the exception of my asthma, and it's bad. So I basically, with these FOI requests, there was no proof of the isolation. So now we've been able to show the proof. We're trying to get this to the media. We're trying to get to this government and stuff like this. And it's this complete resistance. It's like, you have to do this. It's like compliance over science. And when the high-level science people are speaking out about against lockdowns, non-pharmaceutical measures, i.e. social distancing and masks, there's a massive problem, and because we're censoring it. People are not able to actually find out what's going on. Instead, we got to put on these masks, we have to comply. Now, contrary to what people think, the virus hasn't changed to the point where more people are getting sick compared to what's going on. The only thing that has changed is that they have increased the testing capacity by a factor of 15 since April. Okay, we're not getting as many deaths as we did before. We're focusing all on cases, all on fear, all on cases, all on fear, all on cases. I could go on and on and on and that. And that's not how, that's not how you control that's a great way to control a company, control a country, is through fear. But what is not acceptable is not allowing all levels of debate or discussion through the scientific community to come through. This is why we've had different things like the Great Barrington Declaration. There was a group in Belgium as well, which also had a cosign of about 240 companies and a ton of doctors, which basically came forward with their evidence stating, no, this is not how you do it, right? So, but I got to backtrack. The whole reason why we're in this mess is because of a March 16th Imperial College of London modeling thing done by Neil Ferguson. And basically what I call it's a magical antiquated modeling machine, aka MAM. Now, in the early part of the year, January to be precise, the UK NHS had classified SARS-CoV-2. It just got labeled SARS-CoV-2 as a high consequence or highly classified infectious disease. Now, the UK was following Sweden's very moderate measures. Okay, not full Draco. Economy's still open. People can social distance if they want. There was no mask mandate, etc., etc., etc. Now, up until everything was going fine in the world until March 16th. And on March 16th, the Imperial College, along with Neil Ferguson, had pumped in this scenario on their 18-digit modeling, which has been just shredded by actual modeling experts, even from Google of all places. And I never thought I would ever give any confidence into Google, but whatever. So they basically put in these numbers into a machine and essentially said that, okay, if we don't go full lockdown, what are the results? Okay, up to 510,000 deaths in the UK, up to 2.2 million deaths in the States, 440,000 deaths in Canada, and about 400,000 deaths in Sweden. Okay, so that was March 16th. March 19th, they went and redid the model, and it was downgraded 2 days later on the 21st to about 25,000 UK deaths. Okay, That's great. Even the UK NHS had updated this on the site, but the problem is that every single media outlet, okay, had carried, and government had carried this fear, this full on Draco modeling a projection from Imperial College, and they never noticed the retraction. So we went full bore into fear. You're going to die. You're going to kill grandma. You have to do all this and this and this. Like even the social distancing, like when Bonnie Henry admitted on tape back in April, when people were asking about all the numbers, okay, well, how can you justify having groups of 50, 20, 18, like each province is different? And the only time that she's told the truth about this whole thing is she said basically, and I say, quote, there's no scientific evidence on this. So I decided to do a little bit more digging on this because there was a study on social distancing that was being widely cited by the 12 largest media corporations largest media agencies in North America and a couple in Britain. And basically what they were referring to about a study on social distancing saying that it works is completely out to lunch. It was written, and I don't know if you're ready for this, it was written at the time by a 14-year-old girl named Laura Glass, who was a high school student, and she completed it when she was 15. She did it with a model. Now, because she's underage, she wasn't allowed to be the senior author on the paper. Her father was the senior author on the paper, okay? His name is Philip Glass, is a systems analyst with no epidemiological background, no scientific background. He's a system analyst. He deals with computers. That's fine and dandy, but you cannot base social distancing on that. Now, as for masks, there are no peer-reviewed studies in the history of the human race on healthy people having to wear masks to prevent viral transmission. Period. It just doesn't exist. There is one peer-reviewed study. It was a randomized controlled trial that just came out 2 days ago from Denmark, which has been actually blocked and censored by the 3 major medical journals, which finally got published by the ACP journals, which is the American College of Physicians. So it's a medical paper. It's a reputable paper, just like JAMA, the New England Journal of Medicine, etc. Right? So it's ranked in the top 5 of journals, and there's lots of cross-referencing with journals and stuff. So this has now come out, which basically said there's no statistical difference between wearing a mask and not wearing a mask. But the other problem is the control group. There still has not been a control group for healthy people wearing masks. The whole asymptomatic issue that people were talking about, hell, even our prime minister, and I can't believe this, but way back when, like, I decided to go in and pick apart Rocco Galati's class action suit that's going on. And one thing I noticed is that earlier on in the year, when Justin's wife was allegedly had tested positive and she was sick with corona, there was a question saying, well, about asymptomatic transmission. He said, well, I've spoken to my doctors, and he said, because I have no symptoms, I'm not going to be able to, I won't be spreading to anybody. It's a little bit it's not completely verbatim, but that's what the gist of it is. All the studies on asymptomatic transmission has actually been now debunked by high-level science. And on top of that, for people to assume that we're running around being sick without any symptoms is completely insane. Like, it's I'm dumbfounded at the level of stupidity that the masses have taken on this, and especially like after consulting with all my health friends. Like, it's just, I'm stymied. I'm absolutely, I'm dumbfounded. Like, we're at a point right now where we've created so much divide and conquer that if you don't have a face mask on, you're ostracized, you're marginalized, you're belittled, there's violence, there's anger, and that can come from both sides because everybody's getting a little bit pissed off from being stuck in this bloody bubble for 7 months.
Oh, for sure.
Okay? So my biggest problem is that I can't wear a mask. I will have an asthma attack, and I've been dealing with Van City, and I've won my battle with Van City. I've been dealing with Loblaws. I won my battle with Loblaws. I'm going after Walmart next, even though I don't shop there. It's just at a principle for some friends. And I've also, as I said, I've contacted every relevant level of health authority looking for their evidence. Like, as I said, I'm a big one on if there's evidence available, I want to read it, I want to vet it, I want to make sure that, okay, if you're going to be able to promote these measures, justify them, you have to have the science in order to back them up, which they're not doing. Okay, so oh god, I can go on this forever. But it's just that, and plus on top of that, Health Canada doesn't have approved face shields, and they have also been proven not to be any different than a cloth mask or whatever. It's still going to create transmission, because the only way I look at it this way, okay? If this if this alleged virus was as bad as they said it was, you and I wouldn't be allowed to go outside. Okay, nobody would be allowed to their houses. We wouldn't be able to shop. We wouldn't be able to go to the hospital. Nothing. If anything, all our supplies and food would be delivered to us by military. Oddly enough, how they're being recalled in full hazmat suits and full face respirators. Period. Okay, but that's not where it is. We've basically been following a policy done by the WHO, where if you look at the director of the WHO, does not, he's got a doctor of philosophy. He doesn't have a doctor of medicine or epidemiology or virology. He is a doctor of philosophy, and that's the guy running the WHO. Then you look at who does the funding for the WHO. Then you look at even the vaccine trials, like flattening the curve. We flattened it months ago, just like we do for every influenza season. It's historical, okay? It's what we call a Gompertz curve. Now, all these non-pharmaceutical measures, i.e., social distancing and masks, all happened, okay? And I got all the proof for this, which is great, but all happened after the spikes in deaths that happened. Okay, they're all implemented as the Gompertz curve, not the bell curve, but the Gompertz, Gompertz is the name of it, all started to go down like they typically do for every seasonal influenza. Okay, and then what was it, on a news thing about 6 weeks ago, Dr. Tam had mentioned that we have flattened the curve, and I quote, "We flattened the curve months ago, but we have to remain vigilant until a vaccine is ready." Well, if you have a 99.994% recovery rate, why do you need a vaccine? And on top of that, if you actually looked at the vaccine trials when they're saying 90 or 95%, I actually dug into those too, and it's not. On the Pfizer trial, when they said that it was 90% effective, they had 43,554 actual participants in the study. They cherry-picked it down to 95, and then they basically cherry-picked it even more. There was no actual randomized control group in that, and so the likelihood their 90% has actually completely been blown apart. The media is only pushing, it's 90% effective, it's 90%. It's not close. We're talking maybe 0.00009% effective, but not 90% effective. There are injuries of people which are now getting even more severe side effects. I saw something yesterday that a friend sent me of this woman who had a vaccine in the trials, and she had this thing called, it's foot something explosion, or foot it's FD eruption. So basically she had these blisters the size of little Christmas oranges on her feet. She wasn't able to work. She had to quit her job. She was down in the States, medical issue, but it was from a vaccine trial for one of these vaccines. So now we're being told that also, that even with the vaccines coming out, that they still want us to wear masks and social distancing. Well, there's a reason why they're saying that, because in 2016, the WHO had changed the rules on how vaccines are developed, and that's on their site as well too, which I also have the reference for. Basically, they're not testing for transmission for these vaccines. So why exactly do we want to have a vaccine? If we want to vaccinate the entire population, wouldn't you think that the premise of all this is to curb transmission through vaccine, which they haven't been able to cure the flu. They haven't been able to cure influenza A, B. They haven't been able to cure the common cold. Like, coronaviruses have been around in our system for about 60, 70 years. And then in the early 2000s, 2003 to be exact, the CDC and the NIH filed for 2 patents, okay? One was the human transmission of coronavirus. The other one was a test kit to be able to test and detect coronavirus. SARS-CoV, whatever. It's all in the patents, right? So this went on for a few years, but the problem is the CDC had a problem with the U.S. Patent Office basically stating that, well, we're doing this so we don't allow companies to profit on this. Well, the whole purpose of having a patent is to be able to profit from it. I've got friends who've written patents. I've done some ghostwriting on patents, and the whole purpose of having a patent is to be able to make money from it, period. Okay? You have lots of products in your store which have patents on them, okay? So
They're up until 2000, from 2004-5 to about 2008, the U.S. Patent Office was having problems with the CDC on these patents, okay? And then later, just fast forward, it wound up going to the Supreme Court because there was an issue about gain of function. Now, gain of function basically means that you're testing on humans, which turned out to be illegal in the States. So, to 2014, it got transferred overseas over to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And there was, in 2001 though, after the 9/11 thing, what not a lot of people understand is on 9/18 is when the anthrax scare came out. So Bush II had created a fund, and this is really important, had created a $1.74 billion fund annually to be put into biowarfare and bioresearch or bioterrorism testing and development. So in the event that somebody launched some kind of crazy virus, they would have all this money to be able to throw into the vaccine companies rather than take it out from the taxpayer at the time of the incident. Well, okay, so let's say it's 2001 when this started. It's now 2020. It's 19 years, so $1.74 billion a year is about $28 billion. Yeah, it's about $28 billion which they've had set aside, not including the money that they used to go, the $7.48 million which went to the Wuhan virus from Fauci and the NIH and CDC. So when I looked at the patents, I realized, well, I need to look deeper in the patents because I decided to look at all the patents that the CDC has. They have 180 patents, okay? Now, up until 3 years ago, if you were a patent holder and worked for the CDC, you could claim all the royalties from it, okay? But then I think 3-4 years ago, they went and capped it at $150,000 per year for your patent. So if you have multiple patents, as let's say 10 patents, you get $150,000 from it, guaranteed. That's $1 million, not including your salary. Okay, so now I dove down deep into the rabbit hole of patents, and I mean deep. And I got through to about the first 40 of the CDC's patents, and I found 4 viruses which they have patents for, which have at least 5 symptoms of what we're experiencing going through right now. And to date, there are 12 different types of diseases and or viruses which have at least 5 similar symptoms as SARS-CoV-2. Now, I'm only 50 patents in, okay? I haven't touched the NIH's 80-plus patents. I haven't even got into the NIAID's patents, which I think I've been told is about 120, but I haven't looked at them. And then I also haven't looked at the NHS's patents as well, too. But all these start to paint a picture. And when I look into things, you know, I take tons of notes. I vet the hell out of the sources. Okay, I would never give you something which is based on false information because that's not how I live. That's not how I do business. I wake up with a clear conscience every day, knowing that if I'm right or wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm not going to gloat because it doesn't solve anything, right? I'm trying to get an open debate with people to understand that, listen, contrary to what these orders are, or whatever, they're not based on law. And unfortunately, our charter and even human rights law supersedes any order, period. Okay? And as I read you earlier about the second half of the ordinance, which basically it recognizes exemptions. Well, right now what's happening is Costco and other companies are you've created your own fiefdom on leased land, which is a big problem. It's a massive legal challenge not for us. It'll be a massive legal challenge when we start slamming notice of liability, notice of principal, and notice to agents on every business and government agent or whatever who is complicit in this. Because, you see, when I was dealing with Van City, I do 1 deposit a week, but the problem with Van City, especially at the branch I go to, is always a lineup because we have a lot of chatty Cathys in there, which is fine, and I appreciate that. So on average, for me to make my deposit for my tenant's rent, it takes me 25 minutes in the bank, period. Any time of day, 25 minutes, okay? So I have my respiratory issue is triggered within 30 seconds, and I posed a question to the manager. I started with the manager, then I went up with the regional director, the Fraser Valley regional director, then I got to the VP. And I I gave him all the evidence and sources that I gave him, but I posed him some very, very important questions. Now, me as a customer, I go in there. Costco, it's not a 2-minute job, okay? Costco is usually half hour, 45 minutes for us because aside from shopping and trying to grab stuff, then you have the lineups depending on what time of day that you go to. So the question I pose to the Van City and to Loblaws and everybody else is, okay, I'm in your business. I have to wear this mask based on your policy, not based on actual law, but on a government ordinance, which is still does not supersede the charter, still does not supersede human rights. Okay, and I all of a sudden pass out. I split my head open on something, and I either, bleed to death, or I knock something over and take a whole bunch of things out and knock down a pallet or whatever, and I injure people aside from myself. Who is liable for this? And their answer stymied the crap out of me. That's a really good question, Owen. Well, no, it shouldn't be a really good question. Where is your risk-benefit analysis? You can't do a risk-benefit analysis on one side. I've worked for ISO 9001 companies before, and trust me, when it comes to the audits, I'm the guy who had to do the audits with the auditors. And when you learn how to nitpick really, really quickly when you have an ISO 9001 certification, trust me on that. Like you are accountable from the time that your first contact with your customer to your follow-up. Okay, and that could be a couple of days, that could be a year, but you're still accountable for that. So I posed that question to them. They weren't able to answer it. I said, okay, well let's take this one step further. Now you are posing these measures on your staff under safety, even though there's still no medical evidence to show that masks can actually stop the transmission or transmission of a virus, because the virus is too small. And when you look at all the mask boxes, they say, will not stop viruses. It can stop germs, are great, which is fine and dandy, but it cannot stop a virus, because a virus is essentially between 0.6 microns to 0.14 microns, okay? The masks only stop to 0.3 microns. Now, people say, well, Owen, what about when you cough and you get those big phlegm things? That's fine, but like we're talking about billions of particles, and it's not in that one little piece of spit. Okay, it's everything. When you cough, it's not one big gob, right? It's a complete spew thing. So even the smaller finite particles will still go through the mask. On top of that, if your face isn't completely sealed, it goes through the sides and goes up through the top or through the bottom. And that's been proven as well too through thermal cameras, through imagery cameras, and a whole bunch of other things. So now we're at an impasse right now where if I want to go shopping, I have to wear a face mask, or I have to wear a face shield, which still doesn't stop the transmission. And you're also assuming that I'm going to get sick, or I am sick, that I'm going to get somebody sick, when even Health Canada doesn't have any approved face shields, because they don't really. If you're using it for painting or something like that, that's fine. Okay, but when you're walking around and trying to breathe and everything else, it goes to the other part of it, of the psychological aspect. I've had friends, as I said, who have been through serious sexual trauma or serious physical abuse and stuff like that, and putting anything on their face triggers an enormous anxiety and PTSD event. And this isn't even military people, okay? So you're coming back from fighting, and you were in the front battle lines, watching your heads getting blown off and all this other stuff. You're traumatized by certain things, and it could be the smallest thing which triggers it. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to trigger a crazy psychological event, I'm not saying it's going to trigger a psychotic event. What I'm saying is that it has the potential of creating more harm than good. There is, as I said, there is no empirical scientific data on masks for healthy population. There is no randomized controlled trials ever in the history of man for healthy groups having to wear face masks during any type of influenza. Period. It just doesn't exist, okay? Like, every single bit of information, as I said earlier, about these face masks do not do any good for you. In fact, even with your hand sanitizers, for example, that you're making people use, like, i.e. for your staff, for example, Health Canada does not have one approved hand sanitizer on their website, okay? And on top of that, there has been a recall for 147 different hand sanitizers because they contained methane. 147. And there's also been a lot of issues. So if you have eczema, or if you have dry skin, or any other kind of issue like that, or if you have hyperhidrosis where your hands get all wet and stuff. These hand sanitizers are just getting into the cells even quicker. Okay, so into your pores, which again is not healthy for us. They actually had 2 deaths, believe it or not, from hand sanitizer. They had a woman also had their hands catch on fire from hand sanitizer. Now, I'm not saying it's wise to go light a match, but people smoke, so they go and wipe their hands or with the stuff, and it's not probably dry, and they let it smoke, and poof. Okay, I'm not the president of the Darwin sort of awards here, but that kind of is number one in my idiocy things. Is like, don't make sure your hands are dry if you're going to be around a match. So it is what it is. So now, as I said, we have no scientific evidence on social distancing. So all those dots and all these keeping people away does not work. It's been proven that they don't work. We have more evidence showing the negative health effects of wearing masks than we do have for the actual justification of wearing masks. We still have not been able to isolate or purify the virus, which is oddly a big problem. And now I'm talking to you on the phone trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going to shop there, I only have a few options now. Okay, I can order online, but if I order online, I pay an inflated price rather than going and picking it off the shelf myself. Now, when it comes to buying foods, for example, like your clamshells, not every clamshell is the same. I'm an extremely healthy eater. I am on a keto diet, and this is another thing I like to bring up to your attention. If you're going to have keto products, make sure they don't have tapioca starch in them. Tapioca starch is actually not truly keto, and it's kind of like a dirty keto. So when you're promoting keto products, don't promote those.
What do you call that, sorry?
It's called tapioca starch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not really relevant. But anyways, that's for a completely different discussion. So I intend to escalate this, and what I need is your help on this in order to figure out, okay, who are the policy makers for Costco? Is it a national thing that comes in? Is it a provincial thing? Because as I said, each province is a little bit different, and each province has its own things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're talking about like the human rights, and we're talking about our charter. My constitutional rights, your constitutional rights. Like mandatory face masks violate Section 2A and B and Section 7. And it also requires our consent under Section 10 of the Health Care Act. Okay, that's just 3 of them. So now my big thing is that I really want to shop at Costco. We've spent pardon my friends, a shit ton of money with you guys over the years. I mean, like we go there basically every week to every 2 weeks. We're spending on average anywhere between $200 to $600 on average for 2 people. Okay, not for a family of 10, for 2 of us. That's it. And I get a lot of my stuff from you guys, which is great, but I don't want to be ordering online. I like paying cash, and guess what? There's still no proof on cash containing COVID. I'd be more worried about the 2,000 germs that are on cash, or the amount of cocaine on $20 bills. Like, there was a study that somebody did a few years ago trying to dissect exactly what exactly is on the money. And they found out that, 78 or 90% of all bills in circulation has cocaine on it. I'm like, holy Jesus, you can't make this up, right? So we used to do a lot of shopping down in the States. And a couple of places that we go to, or used to go to, they had these automated teller things where you could pay cash. Now, part of me has kind of thought about this. Okay, if you're worried about cash being exchanged, like I'm talking about the earlier days, the smartest thing would have been to do is they do have cash machines or automated tellers or automated tills which accept cash. Now, Freshco out here had it for a bit until they converted to plastic. Okay, their mistake, but whatever, right? It's a choice. This is all about, it should be freedom to choose. Now, I know you're getting a lot of calls about people worried about, well, you've got non-maskers coming into your store. But if any of those people spent one fraction of the time that I've spent looking into this, or even having a chat with me, Okay, or people who are actually aware. I know there's a lot of idiots out there who are trying to say that, like everybody tries to add like politics to it. I'm not here to politicize anything. I'm here to say, listen, there's a common sense approach which is being completely ignored here. And on top of this, coronavirus in history, including SARS and H1 and all the other ones, have this nasty little habit. They resolve themselves. That's why there's never been a vaccine for coronavirus. That's why the CDC, when I was talking about their patents, they've never been able to find a successful vaccine for SARS-1 or any coronavirus since then. And now their patent, as I was alluding to earlier, actually I didn't get to finish that one. Their patent expired in 2018, okay? But there was another company called Inava or whatever, which took over the patent, which has the rights on the PCR test kits. But here's an interesting thing about the PCR test kit. There are 286 manufacturers of these kits, and the only reason why we have them out here is from an early February, I think it's February 2nd, February 3rd, FDA, EUA. Now, an EUA is called an Emergency Use Authorization, okay? And there's a big problem with the EUA. The EUA essentially basically bypasses any of the 2-year rigorous testing that these devices go through. Okay, but and here's the logic for this. Well, we just isolated the virus in January, and a month later, we're going to bring this test kit out to the market, brand new. Okay, here all the companies get to do it, and this is what you get to do. Well, okay, but you skipped all the testing. Like it's bad enough that we skipped the animal trials in the testing for the vaccines this round, which oddly enough in prior vaccine trials for coronavirus had a 100% death rate in the animal trials. Just food for thought there, okay? So now we've got these PCR test kits, which based on the inventor, well, the RT-PCR test kit was invented by a gentleman in 1986 named Kary Mullis. Kary Mullis made it in 86. He won a Nobel Prize for it in 91. He did a lot of major research for AIDS and stuff like that through Fauci and a bunch of other guys, although he thinks Fauci was a dank, and I agree with him. But he had this one note, very, very important note about his kit. And I quote, "For research purposes only and not for diagnostic procedures." Okay, now I decided to do the very first paper that I wrote on all this was actually on the RT-PCR test kit, and I know quite a bit about them, and I know what they can. I know what their limitations are, and when you start screwing with the cycle threshold, which we're doing here in BC, it's okay between 29 and 35 cycles. We're doing it at 40 to 45 cycles, which you're going to guarantee a case. You're going to guarantee a false positive or a positive case regardless if you've been in contact. And I've had friends actually test this. I had a friend who is absolutely paranoid and freaked out right now. And he has been. Every time there's something that comes on, he's a germaphobe and he's like, he locks himself up. But he had to come out for supplies and he decided to go get a test. He went to go get a test first. Well, didn't do shopping, okay? He came out, he tested positive, and he freaked out. He goes, "Dude, I have not been around anybody for 6 months. I don't understand what's going on." And he lives in BC. I said, "Did you get an RT-PCR test?" He goes, "Yep." I said, "Well, there's your problem right there." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "The cycle threshold's too high." He said, "You're guaranteed to get, a false positive or a positive." And it took me 3 days to calm him down. He was ready to kill himself. I've had actually friends kill themselves during this time. I've seen more people, and the death numbers, more people are dying from suicides than they are from the coronavirus. Or dying from, well, actually, yeah, the coronavirus, because as I said earlier, SARS-CoV-2 has not been isolated or purified. So more people are dying from this than they are anything else, and it needs to stop. We need to stop the fear. Now, I represent a couple of local businesses here who have basically looked into the science, and they've approached me. It's like, listen, what can we do to stand up for ourselves to be able to but basically to get past this idiocy, because it's not working. It's like we've had this virus around for a year now, and it hasn't wiped out the population like they said it would. And on top of that, Sweden isn't having a spike in cases or deaths. They flattened the curve months ago. Vietnam has a population of 95 million people. They didn't lock down. They didn't do any kind of masking or social distancing. You know how many deaths they had? 65 people. And on the 2 cruise ships when this first came out, I used to be a music director on a cruise ship out of Sydney, Australia, and I used to go out for 6-month periods. Okay, that was the most interesting thing as well too, because we used to have a thing called the Norwalk virus, and the Norwalk virus is basically, in a nutshell, the shits and the pukes, and you puke and you poo for 3-4 days straight. And one of my guitarists had it, and I don't want to wish it on anybody. I used to tease about it, but I wouldn't want to be the guy who's having to witness that, right? So, and Norwalk virus, oddly enough, is caused or transmitted if you do not wash your hands. Odd, okay? So, I've been quarantined. I've been on a ship where we've had the entire cruise ship of like just under 3,000 people under a 4-day quarantine because of norovirus. Now, we didn't have masks, we didn't have social distancing, we just carried on, we just weren't allowed to dock into port. Okay, it resolved itself, we were able to dock into port, continue on with our cruise, blah, 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 everything was fine. And then, I started looking at the Diamond Princess, which has about 4,500 crew and passengers. They had a few hundred cases. They had 11 deaths. They were quarantined for 2+ weeks or 3+ weeks. They didn't lock people up in their berths or their cabins because you'd have mutiny. Okay, you can't lock somebody in a small cabin, and you can't lock your staff up in cabins unless they're sick. But they had like 13 alleged COVID deaths. Okay, that's fine. But what people don't understand, and this is what I learned after being on a cruise ship for 6 months, is you have a very high seniors population on these. And a lot of seniors actually choose to live on a cruise ship versus living in a care home because it's cheaper. The food's better and the medical care is better. And I met like usually half a dozen old people when I was on the cruises every single rotation, right? So I got to know them. So now I'm able to add this into the Diamond Princess. The MV Zandam had a total crew and passengers about 2,400 people. They had, I think, 3 or 4 deaths, and they were also like waterlocked or not allowed to come into port, or they were stuck in port but not allowed to come out off the ship for 3 weeks. Okay, so I found like even Belarus didn't go down through lockdowns and whatnot, and they were fine. They had a very low death toll. Japan, I think they had like 33 deaths, and people tell me, well, and they wear masks out there. Well, yeah, they do, but here's the problem. The manufacturer that sent them the masks were all too small. They couldn't use them, and they sent them back. And I've got about 5 friends who live over in Japan, and they told me this, and I'm like, come on, man, you're lying to me. Like, you seriously are telling me that they sent you a mask which is too small? I was like, yep. I said, so what are you guys doing? I said, we're just living our day normally. I'm like, wow, what a concept. We live in a society which was based on the foundation of democracy and rights and choice and all this other stuff, and now we're allowing governments who we elected to dictate how we live our lives. Now, I don't know if you see a problem with that or not. I do. Okay, I don't. If you do not have the right to tell me how to control my health or my body unless I'm acting like an idiot and I'm in the middle of winter walking around naked and I'm spraying people with like a paint gun or whatever the hell, okay? Or I'm whacked out on drugs or something like this. If I'm not in a conscious state of mind, you do not have the right to enforce anything on me against my will. Which brings me back to this whole mask face shield thing. As I said, there's no proof for either, and if I'm the one who spearheads this, which I have been spearheading a lot of different things on this thing so far, so be it. I'll take that and I'll march to the top with it. But I need to figure out how I can get this escalated, because I come here with an open mind. I come to you with as plenty of evidence and sources to be able to back up what my position is. I do care for humanity. I love everybody, even the people who piss me off. I still love them. I was brought up in an environment where love is better than hate. I had a father who went and fought in World War II. His first tour of duty was the day before D-Day. Okay, he lost his parents during the bombing. I lost $1 billion shipping empire because of Hitler, okay? So I'm not overly happy about that, but life moves on. My dad, his first tour of duty was the day before D-Day. He was an SAS commander. He was second command. He was 18 years old. He landed on the beaches of Normandy. His best friend, who was a CO, within 3 minutes got his head blown off. Out of the 26 guys that came out, he brought 24 back. Out of the 26 guys that went in, he brought 24 back. So it's quite commendable. But he passed away from cancer a few years ago, and I tell you right now, he would be pissed at me if I didn't make a stand. And I've drawn a line in the stand out of his honor, out of your parents' honor, out of anybody who cannot look at the rationale of this. Like, this upsets me to no avail. I'm just like, why the hell do I have to call you in order to figure out how I can shop, how I can spend my money? Like, and
I'm going to be honest with you, okay? I really appreciate your call. And you come across like a very knowledgeable, first of all, professional, and you need to understand that. I really liked what you said about peacefully and understanding everyone has a right and so on and so forth. We've been dealing with this for quite a while about the mask issue. It's not our first battle with this. And I have to tell you, I heard a lot of reasons. I have my own beliefs, okay? And I appreciate the fact, first of all, how you delivering the message, because I have to tell you, it's obvious that you're an intelligent man and it's knowledgeable. The way you're displaying your facts, the way you're actually talking to me with respect, it's exactly what everyone should do with me, because I do the same with everyone else.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you're probably the fourth or fifth person that I'm dealing with today, and by any means, you actually be the only one that is actually has been professional with me, and I really thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Because you have to understand that I oversee about 450 employees.
Yep.
And I have about close to 35,000 people walking into the building. Not everyone sends or displays the message as you do, and I really want to thank you for that.
Yep.
So where are we today? The company decided to make this move in the States, and I'm sure that I would assume that you know, obviously, that in the States they started doing this about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, at the beginning of all this, and then the company global-wise, they decided to do this as well. So last week it was announced Eastern Canada, some of the locations have been mandatory for quite a while. Alberta has been mandatory for quite a while. Winnipeg today, during the lockdown. So what the buildings are doing right now, they're actually not selling non-essential items.
Which is crazy though, because clothing would be an essential item. If you have a child, for example, that's growing, they need clothes.
So I'm just telling you the facts. The fact is, the Costco in Winnipeg, unfortunately now, they're not selling pretty much 70% of the merchandise that we actually sell. So Costco is tired of this, and what we decided to do as a company, say, you know what, we want this thing to be gone. We knew as a company that the moment, so we made it mandatory for us. So I've been wearing a mask since I don't know, probably before the summer. I can't believe. I think it was April, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe May that we had the inventory mask. I have like I said, I had 450 employees.
Yep.
My employees are concerned, and you are absolutely right. A lot of people don't know the facts. Okay, I'm not saying that I'm agreeing with you, but what I'm agreeing with you is that there's a lot of people that really don't take the time to research and so on and so forth, and they follow the media. And we all know the media has its own agenda. We all know that.
Oh, it's been proven as well.
And it's really up to an individual to say, you know what, I'm going to find out myself. And it sounds like you are that person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and with the most respect that I have for you, I cannot let you shop in the building without a face shield and without a mask, and I will not let you do that. You obviously know the options that I'm going to give you, because you obviously talked to my manager. My job is to basically, I'm in a a lot of ways. I'm a soldier and have to follow the directions from basically the CEO of the company. The CEO of the company decided to do this, and I have to do that. So I can give you options, which you obviously know the options, but at the moment, I cannot allow anyone to shop in the building with a mask, knowing that a lot of people are not going to be happy about this.
Well, I just won't shop there, right? It's just like, unfortunately, you lose my business and you lose many other people's business because of pressure.
Yes, and trust me, Owen, I already know, and actually I know I'm lying to you. For a fact, I know so far how many people have actually not renewed the membership, and it hurts. Okay, because at the end of the day, it hurts because at the end of the day, we're not a government, we're a business.
Yeah, and here's the problem with that too.
So hold on, Owen, please let me. Yep. So we're aware as a company, we're aware that, but my also responsibility is to my employees, and my employees right now are feeling unsafe. We're doing all the policies, we're doing all the COVID kind of. We allow 40%. Just so you know, my capacity, my full capacity in the building prior to COVID was about over 4,500 people at one time. At one time. So, and it's by a fire code. So today, when I hit the 400, when I had 400 people, the staff door called me and say, hey, Denny, we have about 400 people. So then what I do, then I go out there, I do basically, I check up the building, I take a look at the social distancing, I see if the front end is actually cluttered with people, so on and so forth, and then I make a call. This has not been easy for us either. I have to tell you that I've been with this company for the last 21 years, as a GM for the last 15 years. Since February has been the most difficult time ever. To run this operation. So I can only tell you this: the person that you really want to talk to is the CEO of the company.
Exactly.
And what you want to go on Costco.ca, and you want to basically send and we all read that Costco.ca members feedback. It goes directly to the VPs of this company.
Okay, I have a question for you. Is there a character limit on that?
You know what? No, I don't think so. But what I suggest you to do, not to make it long, because you have to understand that you're not the only person writing. So I highly suggest that if you want to do anything, because you obviously feel passionate about this, and you need to understand that I'm not agreeing with you and I'm not disagreeing with you.
No,
you're giving you the fact.
Yeah, you're basically a rock stuck in a hard place. Or, you're caught in the middle.
No, hold on, Owen. I do have my beliefs, but I'm not going to share that with you. But I wouldn't say that I'm a rock, because I do stand for something. Today is not the moment. First of all, I barely know you, but I will not sit here and have a conversation about this, because I don't feel it's my place. I've shared my views with everything that is going on with close friends and family, but I don't feel that I need to do that with you.
Oh, in all honesty, your opinion is your opinion. I respect that, right? And I have to.
And I respect that your story. You're great storytelling, and actually you would be an interesting person actually to be friend with. However, having said that, I will not give you any names. You can go online. You can go on Costco.ca. I highly suggest for you, if you want to get your message across, the shorter and the better. Because I have to tell you that the CEO of the company is probably getting emails like this since probably March or April. I would say probably April. So I can only tell you this: I'm going to continue to be a good soldier for this company and for the people that I work for, which are my 450 employees. Yesterday, I kicked out 2 members. One was from the food court, because out. It gets to the point where I will call the police if they're actually physical with me and if they're not listening. So I had a member in the building that put a mask on. It was in the middle of the building. We asked him 2 times. The third time I called the police. So I want to be firm with this because I need to be firm. And for you, it sounds like you're not interested in the options that you have. If you don't want to become a member, if you have, and I take it because I understand your views. I totally understand your views. I have no problems. If you're okay, I can refund your membership so you're not losing any money. And then hopefully one day when this whole thing is over, then hopefully you can come back because I would hate to see that I'm losing people left and right.
Well, okay. There's a couple of things here. The onus has been basically dictated by the government to the provinces to put the onus and burden on the business, which is not fair. You are a rock in a hard place. Secondly, your employees are acting out of fear because they're not doing all the research. Okay. Now there's one very important thing that people need to understand about the long-term effects of wearing masks as well too. And there's one of the world-renowned neurologist named Dr. Marguerite Gries-Bryson out of Germany, and she's also a neurophysiologist as well, with a PhD in pharmacology. I'll just quote: the inhalation of our exhaled air will, without a doubt, create oxygen deficiency and flooding of carbon dioxide. We know the human brain is very sensitive to oxygen, O2 deprivation. There are nerve cells, for example, in the hippocampus that can't be longer than 3 minutes without oxygen. They cannot survive. The acute warning symptoms are headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, issues in concentration, slowing down of reaction time, reactions of the cognitive system. However, when you have chronic oxygen deprivation, all the symptoms disappear because you get used to it, but your efficiency will remain impaired and the undersupply of O2 in your brain continues to progress. We know that neurodegenerative diseases take years to decades to develop. If today you forget your phone number, the breakdown in your brain would have already started 20 to 30 years ago. While you're thinking that you have gotten used to wearing a mask and rebreathing your own exhaled air, the degenerative process in your brain are getting amplified as your O2 deprivation continues. The second problem is that the nerve cells in your brain are unable to divide themselves normally. So in case our governments will generously allow us to get rid of masks and go back to breathing O2 freely again in a few months, the lost nerve cells will no longer be regenerated. What is gone is gone. She goes, I do not wear a mask. I need my brain to think. I want to have a clear head when I deal with my patients and not to be carbon dioxide induced anesthesia. There is no unfounded medical exemption from face masks because O2 deprivation is dangerous for every single brain. It must be the free decision of every human being whether they want to wear a mask that is absolutely ineffective to protect themselves from a virus. For children and adolescents, masks are an absolute no-no. Children and adolescents have extremely active and adaptive immune system, and they need a constant interaction with the microbiome of the earth. Their brain is also incredibly active, as it has so much to learn. The child's brain or the youth's brain is thirsting for O2. The more metabolically active the organ is, the more oxygen it requires. In children and adolescents, every organ is metabolically active. To deprive a child or adolescent's brain from O2 or to restrict it in any way is not only dangerous to their health, it is absolute criminal. O2 deficiency inhibits the development of the brain and the damage that has taken place and cannot be reversed. The child needs the brain to learn, and the brain needs O2 to function. We don't have a clinical study for that. This is simple, indisputable physiology. Consciously and purposely induced oxygen deficiency is an absolute deliberate health hazard and an absolute medical contradiction. An absolute medical contradiction in medicine means that this therapy, this method or measure should not be used and is not allowed to be used to coerce an entire population to use absolute medical contradiction by force. There must be definite and serious reason for this, and the reasons must be presented to competent interdisciplinary and independent bodies to be verified and authorized. When in 10 years dementia is going to increase exponentially and the younger generations couldn't reach their God-given potential, it won't help to say we didn't need the masks. How can a veterinarian, a software distributor, a businessman, an electric car manufacturer, a physicist decide on matters regarding health on the entire population? I know how damaging oxygen O2 deprivation is for the brain. Cardiologists know how damaging it is for the heart. Pulmonologists know how damaging it is for the lungs. O2 deprivation damages every single organ. When our health departments, our health insurance, where our health departments, our health insurance, our medical associations, it would have been their duty to be vehemently against the lockdown and to stop it from the very beginning. Why do medical boards issue punishments to doctors who give people exemptions? Does the person or doctor seriously have to prove that O2 deprivation harms people? What kind of medicine are our doctors and medical associations representing? Who is responsible for this crime? The one who wants to enforce it, the ones who won't let it happen and play along, or the ones who prevent it? It's not about masks, it's not about viruses, it's certainly not about your health, it's about much, much more. I'm not participating, I'm not afraid. You can notice that they are already taking our air to breathe. The imperative of the hour is personal responsibility. We are responsible for what we think, not the media. We are responsible for what we do, not our superiors. We are responsible for our health, not the WHO, and we are responsible for what happens in our country, not the government. And I can't put that any more succinctly. And she is so spot on. And this is a world-renowned expert. So yeah, I will be escalating this up the chain. And as I said, I've owned businesses myself. I've been a three-man of an international aerial mapping firm. I had 150 employees in 3 different countries. I took a $1.8 million company. I took the $8.2 million in 2 years, just because I knew where to find money. I look for people's pain and I try to give them, a solution to their problem. And this is no different for me, right? I walked away from very lucrative opportunities when I lost my dad from cancer, and I lost my brother from big pharma. He had a thing called called Sherman's disease, which is a radical scoliosis of the spine. He was 2 years younger than I am. I'm 52 now. And his spine was so screwed up from an accident that went undiagnosed and untreated for years. They had 3 different doctors give him 3 different types of meds. And he passed away the weekend that we went to go try to find him medical cannabis to help him, because he went in for his cortisone shot. He was also on morphine and stuff like this, which was he wasn't over abusing that, but it created a conflict. So I look at, as I said earlier, about these non-pharmaceutical measures and the forced vaccination, and the fact that they did not actually include the most important thing is the purpose of a vaccination is to stop transmission, and they're not doing that. So if this mask thing goes on forever and ever, well, it's not, right? Because thankfully more people are waking up, and I do feel for you when it comes to having to make difficult decisions with members. Now, you've got a lot of members who are getting pissed off, and yes, they don't have half the knowledge that I do, but they're trying to make a stand, and unfortunately, when rhetoric enters a conversation, dialect is lost. And I make sure that every conversation that I go into, I don't resort to rhetorical comments, because it excludes me from the whole conversation. And unfortunately, this is excluding these people who are trying to stand up and say no, because I don't know if they have the intellectual capacity or not, or maybe they've just read enough where they're okay and they just can't refute it, because at that moment of passion, they can't set aside their passionate abilities to say, hey, here are the reasonings, here's the proof, and, what can we do about it? And it's like, I was asked by the BCCDC, and I spent a half an hour on the phone with those guys, because I basically went through the same thing I'm telling you, because I've been doing this so much, it's like back of hand, okay? After my conversation with the BCCDC, the gentleman I was talking to, and I was at like level 4 of the food chain in the BCCDC in order to try to find my answers. And he goes to me, and I was a little bit taken aback by it at first. He goes, I've never had spoken to someone so educated on this topic. And he said, we should have a group set up for people like you who are aware, who are informed, who are who act mature and responsible in their dialogue, so we can actually get a dialogue. He goes, we're just being told, we're just following what we're being told. I said, well, listen, you have a duty to yourself that if you find, it's called, in the military, it's called being a conscientious objector, right? Now, we shouldn't fear being able to speak out against something if we know, not only based on our personal research, but based on our gut feeling, because our body and our soul and our heart and our brain is telling us, listen, this is not right for us. We shouldn't have to live in fear of being able to stand up to that for fear of what the repercussions are. And this is what's happening to us right now. And this is not the society that I was born into. You know, I was born during the Hong Kong flu in 1968 when Woodstock was happening, which had a lot more deaths than we did. But you know, even influenza, for example, this, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's only been 17 reported cases of influenza all year in Canada. In the CDC, for example, down in the States, they stopped counting influenza deaths and cases on March the 12th, which was 10 weeks into the 20-week cycle. The only time that they've stopped that cycle was back in 2018, where they stopped at 16 weeks into their flu cycle, and they had 45 million cases of influenza in the States and between 61,000 to 80,000 deaths. Okay, so I decided to do a little bit of a math workout, and it turned out that comparing April 6 of 2018 to April 6 of 2020, the amount of alleged COVID deaths was 4,500, not 61,000. And the only reason why it's continuing is that there is a different narrative, a different agenda, which is being at play. We're all pawns in this, unfortunately, and it's really it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy that they basically have somewhat succeeded in the whole divide and conquer. It's like Bush the second said after 9/11: if you're not with us, you're against us. And I was like, well, that's not how democracy works. That's not. I've never tried to add democracy or communism or all these stupid isms or crosses. Right? I look at it from a logical perspective, and that's what my dad taught me. My dad taught me how to play chess when I was 2.5 years old. By the time I was 4, I could wipe you out in 4 moves. By the time I was 5, I was thinking 13 moves ahead, and I was a chess champ by the time I was 6. Right, so I've been trained. Plus, he's an SAS commando. Went to Cambridge. Was a brilliant man, but he grounded me a lot, and I spend a lot of time reading, being grounded. And that may be a benefit. It may be a hindrance. I don't really know. Yes, I am opinionated, but when I open my mouth, I open my mouth because I stand by my convictions. I'm extremely well researched, and if I don't know something, I have the common sense, and I'm humble enough to go in and ask for an answer. And trust me, I've been asking lots of questions, and thankfully I've been getting enough answers. And whether they fit my narrative or not, that's fine. Like, I get in tons of debates, even in social media, and I'll drop a little 1-line, 2-line truth bomb, and then I'll get attacked with rhetoric. And I say, okay, do you want me to provide the sources or proof or not? Because typically when I do, as my first comment, everybody just like yawns. And it's like, well, that's fine and dandy, but ignorance of the fact is no excuse. Right? So there are legal challenges which are going on, which are trying to basically reverse this. And I highly recommend, if you get a chance, to take a look at Rocco Galati's class action suit. Just do a Google Rocco Galati COVID class action. I think it's through Vaccine Choice Canada that he's running it through. But it's 196 pages, and I actually finally went through it last night for the 3rd time because I kind of skipped through it a couple times. But last night I decided, you know what? After speaking with your manager yesterday, I was a little bit frustrated in some parts because it just turned into a yelling session, and that's not how I operate. Right? I had a stroke when I was 39. I don't want to have another one, and I'm not going to get upset because somebody is ignorant of the fact. Right? I will get upset if you harm somebody, like a woman, a child, or an animal. And oddly enough, I'm 52. I haven't thrown a punch since I was 16. I've been threatened many times in the past, but again, I got like a 163 IQ. So I've learned how, when I open my mouth, if it's kind of stupid, I know how to backpedal out without getting thrown in the hospital. I've never been punched in the face. Why? Because I'm smart enough not to get punched in the face, as a rule of thumb. But this whole thing, yeah, I will be contacting the CEO, and it's just sad that I have to contact the CEO. Like all these businesses, as I said, you guys have the onus of enforcement, not the government. And that's not right for business. If I was a business owner right now, I'd be losing my bean. I would be incessant about this. I would have my lawyers so far up the government's ass they wouldn't know what hit them. And I've challenged the government before, and I've won. So if this is the step that I have to make, I don't need a refund for the card because we just renewed. What was it the last time we were there, which was a week and a half ago, and I do ask that, okay, if we have to make adjustments, then you need to make adjustments for us. And as I told Van City, and this is quite funny, I said, okay, I need to go in.
Owen, I'm asking you, I'm going to wrap up this phone call. I have a few other people who want to talk to me.
Okay, well, just if you're going to make a shop online, make the prices the same as they are in store. That's it.
So you know what? I promise you that I'm gonna take that, and it's a valid point for the time being, and I'm gonna bring that forward. The logistics, I can't guarantee any, but you know what? I will bring that forward because what I do, I have to do like a detailed. I talk to my boss basically pretty much every week. Okay, Owen, I want to thank you. You've been. I'm gonna be honest with you. You've been one of the most professional people that I've dealt with in regards to the mask issue. So I want to thank you for that.
Okay. Well, good luck, and hopefully we can meet one of these days when all this craziness is done.
Hopefully, let's get this thing done. Let's get over with that because I got to deal with other stuff other than that. And hopefully in the next year or so, because by the time the vaccine comes out, although they're claiming claiming 94.5, the other one claims 95%.
On cherry-picked studies,
if we get it, who knows how long it's going to be.
Yeah, well, it's not based on the vaccine because, as I said earlier, they're not testing for transmission abilities, which is the whole purpose. So the vaccine, contrary to what it is not part of the plan. It's just basically microchipping in through nanotechnology, which has been proven.
Yeah.
There's 4 patents on that as well. So, okay, well, thanks,
thank you
Danny.
very much.
Okay, have a great day. Bye.